Hey folks, and welcome to Gillette Stadium for day 3 of the NFL Draft. It is just before noon and we're getting ready for what's going to be the longest day of the draft, and comparatively pretty short for the Patriots. Even though they have the most picks of any day in the draft, they still only have 3 picks today. What are you guys expecting from today?
Well, I think that they're going to address a few positions where they have long-term needs. Strong safety, possibly tight end to get a guy behind Gronk and Dwayne Allen, depending on, how much longer they think either of those guys are going to be with the organization. Possibly corner. Honestly, as Nick said, they only have 5 picks, so they might end up trading down and trying to get an extra 5th or 6th rounder just so you have another flyer on a guy, because you really never know at that point in the draft who's going to work out and who's not going to. So I think that they could address really a number of positions. It wouldn't surprise me if they doubled up and they went with another pass rusher to couple with Derek Rivers, because we've seen them do that higher in the draft at points when they went Chandler Jones and Jake Beckett in 1st and 3rd, and they went Geno Grissom and Trey Flowers in the 3rd and 4th. So
They've gone Gronk and Hernandez too.
Gronk Hernandez, exactly. So generally they do that, but they have 8 or 9 picks or 7 picks at least. Now they only have 5, so I don't know if they're going to double up on the position, but that pass rusher is the position where they really are the weakest, so it wouldn't shock me if they went with another guy at some point in the draft there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think pass rusher is a deep position in this year's draft. There's going to be a lot of guys that can get late, and if they can find a way to trade back, I think there's plenty of guys they could look at there. I also think the tight end position is one that there's a lot of talent left at still on the board. I mean, we were talking about this beforehand, but I mean, aside from Jake Butt, who was the obvious #1 choice, we got Jordan Leggett, who's from Clemson, who had a great national championship game. I mean, we have Bucky Hodges, who's a freak athlete, and then there's that Iowa guy, is that George Kittle,
yep.
Who, I mean, he's an awesome tight end as well. So there's plenty of talent left on the board at that position, especially for a developmental guy. I mean, the Patriots could just grab one late with a 5th or a 6th round pick, depending on who's still there, and just roll with it.
I think linebacker is another position that they could look at. It's not as deep. That's kind of been exposed because there's not a lot of linebackers that come off the board and come up in day 3 and go, oh, who's on the board? It's Jalen Reeves-Maybin from Tennessee, who's a smaller athletic guy. There's Vince Beagle from Wisconsin, who's a less athletic, productive guy. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of big name, really athletic talent there. So Patriots might be looking for a fringe roster guy there. Interior line, offensive line is another space to look at. They had Isaac Asiata from Utah in for a visit. They could look at a guy for like John Toth, center from Kentucky. There's some value there at the end of the interior offensive line position. That's something they've usually kind of waited on. Usually 3rd or 4th round is where they've got a lot of guys like the yep. Trey Jacksons, and Shaq Mason was a 6th rounder.
He was a 4th rounder also.
Oh, he was a 4th rounder? I messed that up. Yeah. Brian Stork was a 4th yeah. rounder. So yeah, I'll look for an interior line in the 4th round.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of looking at what they have right now. I mean, the Patriots, obviously, they addressed a lot of their positional needs. I mean, they traded for Brandon Cooks, and he got his 5th-year option picked up today. And they got Coney Ely with their 2nd-round pick. So they've addressed pretty much everything they need. Now it's just kind of picking up depth. And at this point in the draft, you see a lot of guys. I mean, 4th round, not so much. But once you get into the 5th, 6th, and 7th, guys might not even make the team. They're kind of just drafted to fight for a roster spot and see what happens.
Yeah, I think you're also going to see, not that this is really sexy for fans, but they're probably going to sign a ton of UDFAs just because they only have like 67 or so guys on the 90-man roster right now. And so they got 23 spots to fill. They only have 3 more draft picks. They'll probably bring in a handful of veteran free agents who are still out there, kind of like the EJ Biggers cornerback they signed last year. Didn't make. There's a lot of guys who probably are long shots to make the team, like Donald Brown was last year. But they'll probably bring a good number of undrafted free agents, and we've seen them have a lot of success with those guys. Brandon King was an undrafted free agent. Obviously, Malcolm Butler was an undrafted free agent. DJ Foster, who made the 53 last year, was an undrafted free agent. So those guys aren't going to get a lot of attention, and you're going to hear a lot of names, and you probably won't recognize most of them. But I can pretty much guarantee that at least 1 or 2 of those guys who they sign after the draft is going to end up on the 53-man roster, and maybe one or two makes an impact.
Yeah, it's real tempting to just go, oh, who's the next Malcolm Butler? But that's a way too.
Right.
That's once in a blue moon. The real question is, who's the next Jonathan Jones, or who's the next David Andrews?
There you go.
Like, they're the guys that are contributing, and the Patriots just got them for free, basically. Those are the real things we'll look out for. And if people keep talking about how deep this draft is, the way you're going to get the most value is picking up a bunch of undrafted free agents and cashing in a bunch of lottery tickets. See what you have there. Now, we were talking earlier about the insane economics of the Patriots draft, and we noticed last night the Patriots have traded every single one of their picks that they were originally given to them. And we were talking about the Coney Ealy pick, and like, well, what did the Patriots get for Coney Ealy? Well, technically, the Patriots traded their second-round pick, traded down for Coney Ealy in a third-round pick, and they turned that third-round pick into more picks, and it just keeps branching off. Like, it's like a draft pick hydra. You cut off the head, and like a veteran defensive end, and two more draft picks pop onto it, and you don't know what it is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that as well. I mean, they've traded every single pick, and I mean, they got Brandon Cooks, they got Coney Ealy, they got Dwayne Allen, they got Barkevius Mingo, Kyle Van Noy. These are all the players they've gotten for their draft picks, and some of those guys helped them win a Super Bowl last year. Some of them are ideally going to help them win a Super Bowl in the future. So if you're wondering, like, man, why don't the Patriots have any picks? Like, they've used them. They use them in a different way. It's different than the way the Patriots have typically done things in the past. Usually they'll use them and they'll pick up depth in the draft. This time, they're picking up kind of veteran players. I guess, Duffy, do you have maybe any reason why that maybe they would do that? Or?
Well, I think the common narrative with that is that they're going all in for 2017. And there might be some truth to that a little bit, but I think that's a little overplayed, because when you trade for a guy like Cooks, to me, it was a move also for the future, because you really don't know how much longer Julian Edelman's going to be able to give you what he's given you, given his age and given his injury history. I mean, he's an all-time Patriot, but you have to be realistic. Like, he's about to turn 31 years old, and he's had a ton of injuries. So Cooks is not the exact same player as Edelman, but we saw what happened in the Patriots offense when Edelman wasn't in it. It was a disaster. So they knew they needed to add another playmaker, and Cooks, I think, gives them that not only for 2017, but for 2018, 2019, if Julian Edelman's not part of the team. So I do think that, yes, they are in a way going all in, but they're also kind of just doing business as usual. If they were going all in, wouldn't they have traded Jimmy Garoppolo for a bunch of first-round picks and tried to, get as much depth as possible, just, add some defensive players for him? But they didn't do that. So they have one foot in the all-in, and they have one foot in the we're still prepping for the future.
I think a lot of it is the Patriots just like realizing it's sort of like a Moneyball thing, that other teams are finally starting to warm up to a trade market, and I think that Bill Belichick sees he's getting what I'm assuming is real bargain prices. He's getting Mike Gillislee for a 5th-round pick. He got Coney Ealy for almost nothing. He's getting these guys for really low prices, veteran talent, for picks that aren't going to yield great players, and realizing that they're getting players as undrafted free agents. So turn some picks into veteran players, and then just go wild on the undrafted free agent market. So like a free agent, like a fantasy football stars and studs draft.
Yeah, I just want to know, Brandon Cooks is 23 years old. So, I mean, he's going to be around for a while if they can keep signing his contract. I mean, and he's got what, like 4.3 speed. He's everything you want in a receiver. So right now, I mean, you've locked up a potential #1 receiver for 2 more years. You have a chance to lock him up for longer because he's already on your team. It seems like it's a good deal to do.
Yeah, and to Nick's point on someone like Gillislee, it seems like you're giving up a lot, because you're giving up a 5th-round pick and you're paying him a decent amount. The Patriots, they have $20 million in cap space, and I know they probably want to roll some of that over if they intend to franchise Jimmy Garoppolo next year, which if they don't trade him this year, I would fully believe they probably will franchise him, because they're not going to let him walk. I refuse to believe they'll let him walk for nothing. But anyway, they have some money, and those picks at the end of the draft, look, the Patriots have hit on some guys in the 5th and 6th round, and they've also swung and missed on guys like Matthew Wells, if you guys remember who that was. He was a 5th-round pick. He didn't play a sec. He got traded in training camp to the Bears. Didn't play a second for either team. So
Grugier Hill, same deal.
Yeah, Grugier Hill, who was like all of the buzz in training camp. I mean, people love this guy because he was a great athlete. And then a Landon Roberts made the team over him, and we're like, what? Who the hell is a Landon Roberts? And the guy ends up starting in the Super Bowl, and really, I thought showed flashes to be a really productive NFL player. So there's just uncertainty when you're picking that late in the draft. And the Patriots are good at finding guys, but it doesn't mean they always find guys. They miss sometimes. So to Nick's point, you get Gillislee, who's averaged 5.7 yards a carry over his last 154 carries in 2 years. You know he's a good player, and that's, I think, what the Patriots are looking for, someone who's a proven commodity.
Well, anyway, the fourth round will be starting here in just a few minutes.
Yeah,
so,
12 minutes. We should get in there.
Yeah, we should get in there. But thanks, everyone, for watching. Be sure to stay tuned for all of our coverage at masslive.com/Patriots, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, Al.